I'm Emma Hughes, 33, an Air Force major who worked her way up from ROTC and long nights in logistics to leading crews under pressure. For years, I covered for family, sent money, showed up, and kept quiet. Then at a backyard barbecue my cousin joked, still milking the PTSD? And minutes later the TV cut to breaking news with my face and name, Silver Star. I drew a line that day and everything changed. Ever been dismissed or humiliated by someone you backed without question? Share it in the comments. You're not the only one. Before I get into it, tell me where you're tuning in from. And if you've ever had to stand your ground after being wronged, tap like and subscribe for more real stories about boundaries and taking your power back. What happened next might surprise you. I grew up in a subdivision outside Colorado Springs where the houses all looked the same and everyone knew everyone's business. My cousin Ryan lived 3 streets over. We weren't just cousins, we were the kind of close that comes from shared grandparents' basements, summer camp cabins, and every major holiday since birth. I was the serious one. Ryan was the one who made everyone laugh. He'd show up to family dinners with a new story, a new impression, some joke that had our uncles slapping the table. I'd sit there with my homework done, my scholarship application submitted, my ROTC physical fitness test scores memorized. He called me Captain Buzzkill before I ever wore a uniform. I didn't mind. We balanced each other out, or so I thought. I commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Air Force right out of college. 22 years old, fresh degree in logistics management, sharp salute, and a family that showed up to my ceremony in matching blue shirts they'd gotten printed special. My dad cried. My mom took 300 photos. Ryan gave me a flask engraved with Lieutenant Sirius and hugged me so hard I thought my ribs would crack. That first year, they asked questions. What's it like? Where are you stationed? Do you fly planes? I explained that I worked in supply chain operations, that I coordinated cargo movements, that most of my job happened in front of screens and spreadsheets. The questions stopped. I got promoted to first lieutenant at 24. My family sent a card. Ryan texted, "Congrats on the promotion, desk jockey." I sent him a laughing emoji back. It was still funny then. I spent my first deployment in Qatar, managing supply lines for combat operations in Afghanistan. 112-degree heat, 12-hour shifts, and the constant hum of cargo planes overhead. I sent postcards. I mailed my mom a scarf from the local market. I paid for my parents' new water heater when theirs died, and they mentioned it in passing during a satellite call. When I came home on leave, Ryan was bartending at a brewery downtown. He dropped out of his 3rd attempt at community college. My aunt said he was finding himself. He poured me a beer and said, "So how was your vacation in the desert?" I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. At 26, I made captain. My responsibilities expanded. I wasn't just moving supplies anymore. I was coordinating entire mission support packages, working with flight operations, interfacing with combat units. I learned the weight of decisions made in air-conditioned rooms that played out in dust and danger thousands of miles away. Ryan posted on social media about supporting the troops. He'd found a group of guys at the bar who liked to wear grunt-style t-shirts and talk about how soft the military had gotten. None of them had served. I didn't correct him online. I called him once, asked if he wanted to grab lunch when I was home for Christmas. He said sure but canceled 2 hours before, said something came up. My mom made excuses for him at dinner. "He's going through a phase," she said, passing me the potatoes. My dad changed the subject. I deployed to Syria when I was 28. We ran logistics support for coalition operations, supply routes, equipment maintenance, coordinating airlift for personnel and materials. It was supposed to be routine. In July, I was assigned as co-pilot on a C-130 cargo flight delivering medical supplies and mail to a forward operating base. The pilot was a major named Sandra Voss, 20 years in, 3 kids back home, a laugh that could fill a hangar. We hit unexpected turbulence over the mountains. The aircraft shuddered, alarm screaming, Sandra's hands steady on the controls. Then the hydraulics failed. I can still see her face in profile, backlit by the emergency lighting, calling out readings while I worked the backup systems. We had 40 soldiers in the cargo bay. We had no good options for landing. Sandra kept us in the air for 11 minutes longer than the engineers said was possible. Long enough to clear the mountains. Long enough to find flat ground. We hit hard. The front landing gear collapsed. Metal shrieked. Something exploded behind us, not the fuel, thank God, not the fuel. Sandra didn't make it. I pulled her from the cockpit anyway, my hands slick with blood that wasn't all hers, and coordinated the evacuation of everyone else while the fire crews arrived. 40 soldiers walked away. I walked away. Sandra went home in a flag-draped box. They gave me a Bronze Star for that flight. I was promoted to major at 30. I didn't tell my family about the medal until my mother found the certificate in a box in their garage, something I'd mailed home and forgotten about. She called me crying, asking why I hadn't said anything. I told her it didn't seem important. What I didn't tell her was that I'd started seeing things in my peripheral vision, shadows that moved like flames, sounds that made me flinch. The Air Force assigned me to therapy. I went because it was mandatory. I stayed because Dr. Janelle Price didn't let me bullshit her. "You don't have to perform here," she said during our third session, after I'd given her my carefully constructed "I'm fine" report. "No one's grading you." I cried for the first time since the crash. At home, Ryan had started a podcast. He and his bar buddies talked about politics, military issues, the real America. I listened to one episode. He spent 15 minutes explaining what was wrong with modern military leadership, how too many people joined for the wrong reasons, how some people just want the attention. My mom sent me the link with a little heart emoji. Ryan's doing so well. I didn't visit that Christmas. I told them I had duty. I didn't. I just couldn't sit at that table and pretend I didn't hear the edge in Ryan's voice every time he said the word service, like it was something suspect, something that needed to be proven. My Uncle Tom, Ryan's father, had started in 2. At Thanksgiving the year before, he'd asked me if I'd seen any real action or if I just pushed papers. I'd smiled and said logistics kept the whole operation running. He'd nodded and turned back to the football game. I ran. I ran every morning at 0500 hours, pushing until my legs screamed and my lungs burned and I couldn't think about anything except the next mile. My squadron became my family. Captain Reyes, who'd served 3 tours and understood without me saying anything. Lieutenant Colonel Harris, my superior officer, who'd pulled me aside after a briefing and asked if I was sleeping. "Not really, sir," I'd admitted. He'd nodded. "Let's talk about your paperwork." I didn't know what he meant. The paperwork Lieutenant Colonel Harris mentioned turned out to be a formal nomination packet. He wanted to submit my actions from the Syria crash for a higher decoration. I told him no. We were standing in his office at Peterson Air Force Base, March wind howling outside, and I could see he'd already started the process. Witness statements, flight data, incident reports, everything organized in a blue folder on his desk. "With respect, sir, I'm not interested in medals," I said. Harris was 42, barrel-chested, with a mustache that belonged in a different era and eyes that didn't miss anything. He'd flown combat missions in Iraq, trained pilots, and had a reputation for taking care of his people even when they didn't want to be taken care of. "Sit down, Major," he said. I sat. "This isn't about you wanting recognition," he said. "This is about documenting what happened. About making sure that when someone looks at that incident, they understand that a cargo pilot held a dying aircraft together through sheer skill and guts, and that her co-pilot saved 40 lives after she was gone." "Sandra saved those lives," I said. "Sandra and you," he corrected. "Don't diminish what you did because you're uncomfortable with people knowing about it." I stared at the folder. "My family won't care, sir." "Then it's not for them." He slid the folder across the desk. "Read it. Think about it. I need your signature on the witness statement regardless. That's just documentation. The rest is my call as your CO, but I'd rather have your buy-in." I took the folder home. I didn't open it for 3 days. When I finally did, sitting on my apartment floor at 2300 hours with a beer I wasn't drinking, I read witness statements from soldiers who'd been in that cargo bay. One of them, a staff sergeant from Georgia, wrote, "Major Hughes moved through that wreckage like she'd done it 1,000 times. Calm voice, clear orders. She checked every single one of us before she'd let the medics look at her own injuries. I didn't know I was supposed to survive that day until she made it happen. I closed the folder. I signed the statement. I gave Harris permission to submit the packet. Then I tried to forget about it. My family invited me to a barbecue in July. I'd been home exactly twice in the past year, both brief visits, both carefully timed to minimize interaction. But this was my mother's 60th birthday, and she'd specifically asked me to come. I took leave. I drove to Colorado Springs on a Saturday morning, arriving at 1100 hours to a backyard already full of extended family, neighbors, people I half remembered from high school. Ryan was holding court by the grill, wearing a shirt that said "Freedom isn't free" and holding a beer like a microphone. He saw me and grinned. "Hey, look who showed up." The military elite. People laughed. I forced a smile, hugged my mom, handed her the present I'd brought, a nice photo album, nothing fancy. She squeezed me so tight I felt something crack in my chest that wasn't physical. "I'm so glad you're here, sweetheart," she whispered. I spent the first hour doing laps through small talk. Yes, still in the Air Force. Yes, still stationed at Peterson. No, I don't fly the jets. Yes, I've been deployed. No, I can't really talk about most of it. My dad stayed close, a quiet presence that felt like protection. He'd been a mechanic his whole life, understood the value of work that didn't need explanation. Ryan found me by the cooler. He'd gained weight since I'd last seen him, his face ruddier, eyes a little glassy from day drinking. He was 34 now, still bartending, still podcasting, still explaining the world to anyone who'd listen. "Emma, Emma, Emma," he said, throwing an arm around my shoulders. "You look tired. They working you too hard?" "Just the usual," I said, grabbing a water bottle. "Still doing the logistics thing? Or did they finally give you something real to do?" I felt my jaw tighten. Logistics is real, Ryan. You know what I mean. Like, combat. Action. The stuff people actually care about. Someone called his name from across the yard. He squeezed my shoulder and headed off, leaving me standing there with a water bottle I wanted to throw. Lunch was chicken and burgers, corn on the cob, potato salad from 3 different aunts who all claimed theirs was best. I sat at the picnic table with my parents and tried to focus on my mother's stories about her garden. Then Ryan's voice cut through the conversation. "Hey, Emma, you still doing that therapy thing?" The table got quiet. I looked up. He was standing by the grill, several people around him, all watching. "I'm sorry, what?" I said. "The PTSD stuff. You still milking that?" Someone laughed. I'm not sure who. My Uncle Tom, Ryan's father, leaned back in his chair. "Come on, Ryan, don't be an ass." But he was smiling. Ryan shrugged. "I'm just saying, I know plenty of guys who saw real combat and they don't need to talk about it every 5 minutes. Emma flew cargo planes. No disrespect, but like, how traumatic is that?" More laughter. Scattered, uncertain, but there. My mother's hand found mine under the table. I felt her fingers squeeze. I should have said something. I should have stood up and walked out. I should have told them all to go to hell. Instead, I saw Sandra's face. I saw the instrument panel lighting up red. I heard the screaming metal and felt the heat of the fire and smelled the jet fuel and the blood. I saw myself pulling soldiers from the wreckage, counting them, recounting them, making sure, always making sure. My Uncle Tom took a long drink of his beer. "You know, real soldiers don't make a big deal out of their service. They just do the job." "Exactly," Ryan said, pointing at his father. "That's exactly what I'm saying." I stood up. Everyone looked at me. "I need to go," I said quietly. My mother started to protest, but my father put a hand on her arm. I walked through the side gate, got in my car, and drove back to base. I didn't speed. I didn't cry. I just drove, hands at 10 and 2, breathing counted and controlled. At 2100 hours, my phone buzzed. "My mother, please call me." I turned off my phone. I went running. 8 miles in the dark, street lights blurring, my feet hitting pavement in rhythm with my heartbeat. When I got back to my apartment, I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. Dr. Price would have told me to name what I was feeling. Anger. Betrayal. Hurt. Shame that I felt hurt at all. But mostly I felt tired. Tired of trying to bridge a gap that kept getting wider. Tired of defending myself to people who'd decided I wasn't worth defending. Tired of being the responsible one, the serious one, the one who stayed quiet while everyone else laughed. I went inside. I showered. I set my alarm for 0500. And I decided, somewhere in the space between sleep and waking, that I was done trying to make them understand. They didn't have to understand. I knew what I'd done. The people I served with knew what I'd done. That had to be enough. I threw myself into work. If the base had needed someone at 0400 hours, I was there. If a weekend training exercise needed volunteers, my hand went up. Lieutenant Colonel Harris noticed. "You're going to burn out, Hughes," he said, finding me in the logistics office at 1900 hours on a Friday. "I'm fine, sir." He leaned against the door frame, arms crossed. That's what everyone says right before they're not fine. I saved the spreadsheet I'd been working on, cargo manifests for next month's Pacific operations. "Permission to speak freely, sir?" "Always. I'd rather be here than anywhere else right now." He studied me for a moment, then nodded. "Fair enough. But take Sunday off." "That's not a suggestion." I took Sunday off. I went to the climbing gym on base, worked myself up a 50-foot wall until my forearms shook, then sat in my car in the parking lot and finally returned my mother's calls. "Sweetheart, I'm so sorry," she said immediately. "Your father and I talked to Ryan. He feels terrible." I doubted that, but I didn't say so. "It's okay, Mom." "It's not okay. What he said was cruel." "Mom, really?" "I'm fine." We talked for 10 more minutes, her apologizing, me deflecting, both of us pretending this would somehow fix itself. When I hung up, I had 3 texts from Ryan. The first 2 were defensive, "Just a joke, you're being sensitive." The third, sent an hour later, said, "Sorry if I crossed a line." I didn't respond. Captain Reyes found me in the gym Monday morning. Maria Reyes was 30, compact and muscular, with dark eyes that had seen 3 tours in Afghanistan and a directness I appreciated. She dropped her gym bag and started stretching. "Heard you left your family barbecue early," she said. "News travels fast. Your mom called Harris." Harris mentioned it to Colonel Webb. Webb told everyone at staff meeting that family stuff is hard and we should check on you. She glanced at me. "So, I'm checking on you." I finished my set of pull-ups. "My cousin's an asshole." Most family members are, in my experience. She moved to the weight rack. "My brother told everyone at Christmas that I couldn't be a good mother because I'm deployed too much." I reminded him I don't have kids, and he said, "Exactly, because you'd be a terrible mom." Haven't talked to him since. How long ago was that? For years. She started her shoulder presses. Some people need to be right more than they need to be kind. You can't logic someone out of a position they didn't logic themselves into. I sat down on the bench. He called me out in front of everyone. Said I was milking PTSD. That I never saw real combat. Reyes set down her weights. "You pulled 40 people out of a crashed aircraft." He doesn't know about that. "Why not?" "Because I don't talk about it." She wiped her face with her towel. "Look, I get it. The whole quiet professional thing. But sometimes silence just lets assholes fill in the blanks with their own bullshit." She picked up her weights again. "Not saying you owe anyone an explanation. Just saying you might be protecting people who don't deserve it." That night, I got a call from Lieutenant Colonel Harris. "Hughes, you sitting down?" "Yes, sir." The Silver Star nomination went through. Pentagon approved it. Ceremonies scheduled for October 15th at the Air Force Memorial in D.C. You'll need to prepare remarks. I felt my stomach drop. "Sir, I thought that was still under review." It was. But apparently someone at the Pentagon knew Sandra Voss. When they saw the full incident report, they fast-tracked everything. He paused. "This is happening, Major. You can either fight it and make everyone uncomfortable, or you can accept it with grace and honor Sandra's memory. Your call." I closed my eyes. "I'll need to write those remarks, sir." That's what I thought. "Send me a draft by next week." And Hughes, "Sir, be proud. You earned this. Whether you wanted it or not." The ceremony was scheduled for October 15th. My family called. My mother was crying with happiness. My father kept saying, I knew it, I knew it. Even Ryan sent a text, congrats, cuz. Seriously. I didn't respond to that one either. Dr. Price helped me work through the complicated feelings, pride mixed with grief, validation tangled with resentment, the weight of recognition for something I'd have given anything to undo. You know the medal isn't for you, she said during a session. I know it's for what I did. No. It's for everyone who needs to believe that on the worst day, someone will do the right thing. You're the proof of concept. I worked on my remarks for 3 weeks, writing and rewriting until the words felt true. I practiced in front of my mirror, in my car, walking around the base at night. I wanted to honor Sandra. I wanted to acknowledge the crew. I wanted to not break down crying in front of a crowd. My mother asked if she could invite extended family to the ceremony. I said yes before I'd really thought about it. She sent me the list, my parents, my aunt and uncle, Ryan. I stared at Ryan's name for a long time. Then I called my mother back. Mom, about Ryan coming, oh honey, he's so excited. He told everyone at work. He even bought a new suit. I swallowed what I wanted to say. Okay, this is going to be such a special day, she said. I hoped she was right. The week before the ceremony, 60 Minutes ran a special on unsung heroes of recent military operations. They'd gotten access to classified footage of various operations, including helicopter camera angles from the rescue response to our crash. I didn't know it was airing. I was at the commissary when my phone started buzzing, texts from squadron members, friends from other bases, people I hadn't talked to in years. I checked my messages in the parking lot. Reyes had sent a screenshot from the broadcast. Air Force Major Emma Hughes coordinated rescue operations following catastrophic aircraft failure, ensuring all surviving personnel were evacuated despite her own severe injuries. Her actions that day exemplified the highest standards of Air Force leadership. The screenshot showed me pulling someone from the wreckage, face covered in soot and blood, my flight suit torn. I didn't remember that moment. I didn't remember most of it. But apparently, the whole country had just watched it. My phone rang. Harris. Sir, turn on your TV. Channel 7. Now. I drove home, ran inside, found the remote. The segment was ending, but they replayed the key footage. Sandra's final communications. The crash. The fire. And me, moving through the wreckage like I knew what I was doing, when really I was just doing the next thing, and then the next thing, until there were no more things to do. The anchor's voice, Major Hughes will receive the Silver Star next week in a ceremony at the Air Force Memorial. Her story reminds us that heroism often looks like someone simply refusing to quit. My phone didn't stop buzzing for 3 hours. Old friends, distant relatives, people from high school I barely remembered. Everyone wanted to tell me they'd seen it, they were proud, they always knew. Ryan didn't call. Neither did my uncle. My mother called, crying again, barely coherent. My father got on the line. We didn't know, Emma, he said quietly. We didn't know it was like that. It's okay, Dad. It's not. But we're going to make it okay. I wasn't sure what that meant, but I appreciated him trying. That weekend, my family was invited to another barbecue at my uncle's house, the same house where Ryan had humiliated me 3 months earlier. My mother called to tell me they'd declined. Your father told Tom that we wouldn't be attending any family events until certain people learned how to show respect, she said. He actually said that? He actually said that. You should have seen Tom's face. I smiled despite myself. Thanks, Mom. We should have done it sooner, sweetheart. We're sorry we didn't. The night before the ceremony, I couldn't sleep. I got up at 0200 hours and drove to the Air Force Memorial. The 3 stainless steel spires rose into the darkness, reaching up like contrails frozen in time. I stood at the base of the memorial for an hour, just breathing. A security guard approached, checked my ID, saw my rank, and nodded. Big day tomorrow, ma'am? Yes. He smiled. My son's Air Force. Deployed right now. I like to come out here sometimes, just to feel closer to him. We stood together in the dark, 2 people holding on to something we couldn't quite name. When I got back to my hotel room at 0400 hours, I finally slept. The ceremony was scheduled for 1400 hours. I arrived at 1200, already in my dress blues, ribbons, and badges in perfect alignment. My hands weren't shaking. That surprised me. The Air Force Memorial Grounds were set up with white chairs facing a podium, flags positioned on either side. Media had been invited. I saw cameras, reporters, Pentagon officials. Lieutenant Colonel Harris met me at the entrance. "You ready, Major?" "As I'll ever be, sir." "Your family's already here. Front row, right side." I nodded. He squeezed my shoulder. "You're going to do great." At 1300 hours, I walked to the designated waiting area. Through the window, I could see the audience gathering. My mother in a blue dress, my father in his best suit. My aunt looking uncomfortable. My uncle Tom sitting rigid, staring straight ahead. And Ryan. He was in the new suit my mother had mentioned, looking smaller somehow, diminished. He wasn't smiling. At 1345, an aide came to get me. "They're ready for you, ma'am." I followed her through the corridor, my shoes clicking on polished floor. Outside, the September sun was brilliant. The audience stood as I walked to my seat near the podium. I didn't look at them. I looked at the memorial spires, at the sky, at anything but the faces I'd known my whole life. The ceremony began with the national anthem, then the Air Force song. A chaplain gave an invocation. A two-star general whose name I recognized but had never met approached the podium. He talked about service, about sacrifice, about the mission in Syria and what had happened that day. He described Sandra Voss, her career, her family, her final actions. He described the crash in clinical terms that somehow made it worse. Then he turned to me. Major Emma Hughes was 28 years old when she faced the worst moment of her life. She had every reason to panic, every excuse to freeze. Instead, she led. He detailed the rescue, the coordination, the 40 lives saved. Things I'd done without thinking, presented now as something extraordinary. The Silver Star is awarded for gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. But today, we recognize that sometimes the enemy is chaos itself. The enemy is the moment when everything falls apart and someone has to hold it together. He called me forward. I stood, walked to the podium, stood at attention as he read the full citation, every word precise and formal and utterly inadequate to describe what had actually happened. Then he pinned the medal to my uniform. Silver Star on a ribbon of red, white, and blue stripes. It was heavier than I expected. We saluted each other. The audience applauded. I turned to face them for the first time. My mother was crying. My father was standing, hands clasped in front of him, face unreadable. Ryan was staring at me like he'd never seen me before. The general stepped back. It was my turn to speak. I approached the microphone, pulled my notes from my pocket, then decided not to use them. "Thank you, sir. Thank you all for being here." My voice came out steady. "I want to start by honoring Major Sandra Voss, who died doing everything right. She was a pilot, a mother, a friend, and the best aircraft commander I ever flew with. This medal is as much hers as it is mine." I paused, gathering my thoughts. People ask me what it was like that day. The truth is, I don't remember making most of the decisions I made. I just remember faces. The soldiers in the cargo bay, trusting that we'd get them down safely. Sandra, staying calm until the very end. The rescue crews who arrived and took over when I couldn't do anymore. I looked at the audience. I'm a logistics officer. I spend most of my time coordinating supplies, managing cargo manifests, making sure the right equipment gets to the right place at the right time. It's not glamorous work. Most people don't understand what I do, and that's okay. But that day, all that boring, unglamorous work is what saved lives. Knowing systems. Understanding procedures. Being prepared for the worst even when you're praying for the best. My eyes found Ryan. He was looking at his hands. I didn't join the Air Force to be a hero. I joined because I wanted to serve something bigger than myself. Because I believed that ordinary people doing their jobs well, day after day, is what keeps extraordinary things from becoming catastrophes. I folded my notes. This medal is an honor. But it's also a reminder that we're all part of something larger. Every person who trains for emergencies they hope never happen. Every person who shows up and does the work, even when no one's watching. Every person who holds the line when everything's falling apart. I paused. Thank you for your service, whatever form it takes. And thank you for being here today. I stepped back. The applause was louder this time. The general shook my hand again, longer now, saying something I couldn't quite hear over the noise. The ceremony concluded with the Air Force song again, then a benediction. As the audience began to disperse, my family approached. My mother grabbed me first, holding on like she might lose me. I'm so proud of you. So proud. My father hugged me next, his grip tight. You're remarkable, Emma. Always have been. My aunt hugged me quickly, whispered, I'm sorry, and moved away. My Uncle Tom stood in front of me, his face working through emotions I couldn't read. Finally, he extended his hand. Major Hughes, he said formally. Congratulations on your recognition. I shook his hand. Thank you, sir. He nodded and walked away. Then Ryan stepped forward. We looked at each other for a long moment. He opened his mouth. Closed it. Tried again. I watched the footage, he said finally. From the crash. It was on 60 Minutes last week. I know. I didn't. He stopped, swallowed. Emma, I didn't know any of it. I thought you just, I don't know, moved boxes around or something. I do move boxes around, I said quietly. That's part of it. But you also do that. He gestured vaguely at the memorial, at the medal, at everything. I do my job, Ryan. Same as always. I've been an asshole, he said. For years. I've been making jokes about something I didn't understand at all. I didn't disagree. He ran a hand through his hair. I don't know how to make this right. You don't have to make it right today. But I want to. I need to. He looked at me, really looked at me. Will you let me try? I thought about all the years of jokes, of dismissals, of casual cruelty dressed up as humor. I thought about the barbecue, about sitting at that table while everyone laughed. I thought about Dr. Price saying that forgiveness wasn't about them, it was about me. Maybe, I said finally. But it's going to take time. And it's going to take more than just saying you're sorry. I know, he said. I'll do the work. I promise. I nodded. He started to walk away, then turned back. Emma? Yeah, you're the bravest person I know. And I'm sorry it took me this long to see it. He left before I could respond. The months after the ceremony were strange. The media attention faded quickly. There was always another story, another crisis, another headline. But the personal attention didn't fade. It shifted. My family's dynamic changed in ways both obvious and subtle. My mother called every week now, really asking how I was, listening to the answers. My father sent articles about the Air Force, about military leadership, trying to understand my world better. Even my aunt checked in occasionally, awkward but genuine. Ryan disappeared for a while. No texts, no social media posts tagging me in supportive memes, nothing. My mother mentioned he'd stopped doing his podcast. I didn't ask why. I focused on work. There was a new deployment coming up 6 months in Germany, coordinating logistics for NATO operations. I volunteered immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Harris called me into his office in November. You sure about Germany? He asked. You've been through a lot this year. That's exactly why I want to go, sir. I need to get back to the work. He studied me with those perceptive eyes. Running towards something or away from something? Can't it be both? He smiled. Fair enough. You're approved. You ship out in January. I spent Thanksgiving with my parents, just the 3 of us. No extended family, no big gathering. My mother made turkey, my father told stories about his work, and we watched football without commentary about who served how or where. It was quiet. It was nice. On December 10th, Ryan called. I almost didn't answer. Hey, he said when I picked up. Hey. I know I've been radio silent. I wanted to tell you why. I waited. I've been volunteering, he said. At the Veterans Center downtown. 3 days a week. I'm doing intake, helping guys navigate the VA system, just listening mostly. I sat down. Oh. I met this guy, Eddie. Marine Corps vet, 2 tours in Fallujah, can't hold down a job because of PTSD triggers he didn't even know he had. He's been fighting the VA for benefits for 3 years. Ryan's voice was different, quieter, more careful. He told me about his nightmares. About how his family doesn't get it. about feeling like he's fighting the war twice, once over there, once at home. I didn't say anything. Emma, I had no idea. Like, intellectually I knew PTSD was real, but I didn't understand what it actually looked like. What it costs people. Ryan, let me finish. Please. He took a breath. I've been such an asshole. Not just at the barbecue. For years. Making jokes about something that destroys people's lives. Acting like service was only real if it looked a certain way. I was. He paused. I was jealous, I think. You always had direction. Purpose. You were doing something that mattered, and I was just bartending and pretending I had it figured out. There's nothing wrong with bartending, I said quietly. No, but there's something wrong with shitting on other people's accomplishments because you're insecure about your own life. He laughed hollow. Took me 34 years to figure that out. So what now? I asked. Now I keep showing up at the Veterans Center. I'm taking classes to become a certified peer support specialist. And I'm asking if you'll meet me for coffee sometime. Not to absolve myself. Just to. I don't know. Start over, maybe. I looked out my apartment window at the mountains in the distance. I'm deploying to Germany in January. 6 months. Then when you get back, he said. Whenever you're ready. No pressure. Okay, I said. When I get back. Thank you, Em. We hung up. I sat with my phone in my hand, surprised to find I was smiling. Dr. Price was pleased when I told her about the conversation in our next session. How does it feel? She asked. Weird. Good weird, I think. Like something that was broken might actually get fixed. Do you think you can forgive him? Eventually, maybe. But he has to prove he's changed. Words are easy. That's healthy boundary setting, she said. You're allowed to require demonstrated change before rebuilding trust. I deployed to Germany in January. Ramstein Air Base, coordinating movements for NATO exercises and ongoing operations in Eastern Europe. The work was intense but familiar, the kind of complex logistical puzzle I was good at solving. Captain Reyes deployed with me. We shared an office, traded deployment stories, and ran every morning through the German countryside, regardless of weather. 6 months passed faster than I expected. I made captain in March, officially promoted to 04 Major. My parents sent flowers. Ryan sent a card, congratulations on the promotion. Looking forward to that coffee. I kept the card. In May, I got an email from a producer at CBS. They were doing a follow-up piece on Silver Star recipients and wanted to interview me. I declined politely. The medal was on my uniform. That was enough. I came home in July, tan and tired and ready for leave. My parents picked me up from the airport. We stopped for dinner on the way home, nothing fancy, just a diner off the interstate where we could sit in a booth and catch up properly. Ryan's been asking when you're back, my mother said carefully. He has? Every week. Is Emma home yet? Can I have her number to set up that coffee? My father smiled. Kid's persistent, I'll give him that. I pulled out my phone and texted Ryan, home. Coffee next week if you're free. He responded in 30 seconds, name the time and place. We met at a cafe downtown on a Tuesday morning. He was already there when I arrived, sitting at a corner table with 2 cups of coffee. He stood when he saw me. We hugged awkwardly. Welcome home, he said. Thanks. We sat. The coffee was still hot. He'd remembered how I took it. We talked for 2 hours. He told me about the Veterans Center, about the guys he'd met, about the classes he was taking. He told me about Eddie, the Marine, who'd finally gotten his benefits approved after Ryan helped him file the right paperwork. He cried, Ryan said. This big, tough guy who'd survived Fallujah, and he just broke down crying in the intake office because someone finally believed him. That's good work, I said. It matters, he agreed. More than anything I've done before. He asked about Germany. I told him about the operations, the coordination challenges, the satisfaction of complex problems solved. I told him about morning runs with Reyes, about German beer and terrible army jokes. I didn't tell him about the nightmares that still came sometimes, about the therapy sessions via video call with Dr. Price. Some things weren't his to carry yet. I watched a documentary about cargo operations, he said. Did you know only 13% of the Air Force flies combat missions? Everyone else is support, logistics, maintenance, medical, communications. The whole thing falls apart without the people no one thinks about. That's accurate, I said. I never thought about it, he admitted. I thought if you weren't dropping bombs, you weren't really serving. I was so stupid. You were ignorant. There's a difference. Is there? One you can fix, I said. You're fixing it. He smiled, cautious and hopeful. Does this mean we're okay? I thought about that question. We're not okay yet, I said, watching Ryan's face carefully. But we're working toward it. He nodded slowly. That's fair. That's more than fair. We finished our coffee. He asked if we could do this again next week. I said yes. Over the next few months, we met regularly. Coffee became lunch. Lunch became the occasional dinner with our parents. Ryan introduced me to some of the veterans he worked with, not as his accomplished cousin, just as someone who might understand their experiences. I liked him better in this space. He listened more than he talked now. Asked questions instead of making assumptions. There was a humility to him that hadn't existed before, earned through hours of sitting with people whose suffering couldn't be dismissed or joked away. In September, I was assigned to the Pentagon. Promoted to lieutenant colonel at 39, I was now working in strategic logistics planning, coordinating supply chain operations for Air Force missions worldwide. The work was important but largely invisible. Congress argued about defense budgets. Generals made strategic decisions. And I made sure that when they decided to move 5,000 troops to Poland, those troops had food, ammunition, equipment, and a way to get home. My family threw a small celebration for my promotion. Just my parents, my aunt, Uncle Tom, and Ryan. We grilled in my parents' backyard, the same yard where Ryan had humiliated me 3 years earlier. Uncle Tom approached me while I was getting a beer from the cooler. "Lieutenant Colonel," he said. His voice was formal, but his eyes were different now. Softer. "I owe you an apology. A real one." What I said at that barbecue, about real soldiers not bragging, that was ignorant and cruel. "Uncle Tom, let me finish." He squared his shoulders. "I didn't know what you'd done. But that's not an excuse. I should have respected your service regardless. I should have respected you regardless." He extended his hand. "I'm sorry, Emma. And I'm proud of you." I shook his hand. "Thank you, sir. That means a lot." "Ryan's a different person now," he said. "Whatever you said to him, whatever you did, thank you for giving him a second chance." "He's doing the work himself," I said. "I'm just watching." Tom nodded and walked back to the grill. Later, as the sun set and conversation flowed easier than it had in years, Ryan found me sitting on the porch steps. "Can I join you?" "Sure." He sat, beer in hand, looking out at the yard where we'd played as kids. "You remember the summer we built that fort in the woods behind Grandma's house?" "You mean the summer you built a fort and I told you it violated 3 basic engineering principles?" He laughed. "It lasted exactly 1 week before it collapsed. I gave it 5 days. You were always the smart one," he said quietly. We both knew it. "I think that's why He trailed off. "Why you what?" "Why I needed to take you down a notch. Or at least that's what I told myself. Like if I could make you seem less impressive, I'd feel less inadequate." He turned to look at me. "That's not your fault. That's not your burden to carry. But I need you to know I understand now why I did it." "Thank you for telling me," I said. "I've been in therapy," he added. "Since March. Working through a lot of stuff." "That's good, Ryan." The therapist asked me if there was anyone I needed to make amends to. "You were the first person I thought of." He smiled sadly. "Turns out there's a long list." We sat in silence for a while, listening to our parents' laughter from inside. "Are we good?" he asked finally. "Are we ever going to be really good again?" I thought about forgiveness. About how it's not a single moment, but a series of small choices, made over and over, to let go of anger and choose connection instead. "Yeah," I said. "I think we are." He bumped his shoulder against mine, gentle. "Thanks, Em." The years that followed were quieter. I worked at the Pentagon, coordinating operations that rarely made the news. I deployed twice more, once to Qatar, once to South Korea. Each time, my family sent care packages. Ryan sent books. My work was recognized with another promotion at 42 full colonel, 06. The promotion board cited my strategic planning during a humanitarian crisis in East Africa, where I'd coordinated the airlift of medical supplies and personnel to 4 different countries in 72 hours. I'd worked 18-hour days for 2 weeks straight. The operation saved an estimated 30,000 lives. I received a commendation letter. The press never heard about it. Dr. Price retired when I was 43. Our last session, she asked me how I was doing. "I'm good," I said. And meant it. The work is satisfying. My family's in a good place. I'm sleeping better. What about the nightmares? Still come sometimes, but less often. And I know how to handle them now. She smiled. You've done remarkable work, Emma, both in your career and in your personal growth. Thank you for helping me get here. I just held the space. You did the work yourself. Ryan got married when I was 44. Nice woman named Sarah, a teacher who volunteered at the Veterans Center where they'd met. I stood in the wedding as a groomsperson, Ryan's request, not mine. In his toast, he thanked his family for supporting him, Sarah for loving him, and my cousin Emma, who taught me that real strength is knowing when you're wrong and doing the work to be better. I cried, which surprised me. At 45, I was offered a position as Deputy Director of Logistics Operations for the Air Force. I'd be coordinating supply chain management for the entire service. It was the kind of job that ended careers on a high note: senior leadership, strategic impact, the culmination of 23 years of service. I accepted. Ryan and Sarah had their first child when I was 46. A boy named Marcus. Ryan called me from the hospital, voice thick with exhaustion and joy. He's here, Em. He's perfect. Congratulations, Dad. I want him to know you, Ryan said. Really know you. Not the uniform or the medals. You. I'd like that. Marcus was 6 months old when Ryan brought him to visit me at the Pentagon. I gave him a tour, nothing classified, just the public corridors and memorial spaces. Ryan carried Marcus through the halls, pointing out flags and photos, explaining in baby talk that his Aunt Emma worked here, that she did important things. In my office, Ryan looked at the photos on my wall. Me with my squadron. Me in front of AC-130. Me receiving the Silver Star. Sandra Voss's photo, the one I'd carried for years, now framed next to my desk. You keep her photo, Ryan said quietly. Always. She was the best of us. No, I said. She was amazing. But you're the best of us. You stayed. You didn't have to, but you stayed and kept going. Marcus grabbed my finger with his tiny hand. I looked down at him, at his clear eyes and perfect trust. Hey, little man, I said. You've got a good dad. He's going to teach you how to be brave enough to admit when you're wrong. That's rarer than you'd think. Ryan's eyes were wet. Thanks, Em. 3 years later, I was promoted to Brigadier General 07. The first female general in my family line, not that it was tracked. The promotion ceremony was at Bolling Air Force Base in Washington. My entire family came. My parents, now in their 70s, sat in the front row. Uncle Tom and his wife. Ryan, Sarah, and Marcus, now 3 years old and barely able to sit still. Marcus broke free from Sarah's grip halfway through the ceremony and ran toward the stage. Ryan caught him just before he reached the stairs, hoisting him up with an apologetic smile. I caught Marcus's eye and waved. He waved back, giggling. The ceremony continued. A 3-star general pinned the single star to my shoulder. I'd reached a rank that only a fraction of officers ever achieved, yet standing there, I felt less like I'd arrived at a destination and more like I'd simply walked a very long path, one step after another. My remarks were brief. I thanked my family for their support, my mentors for their guidance, and the airmen I'd served with for teaching me that leadership wasn't about authority, it was about service. Afterward, Marcus ran up to me again, this time making it all the way to where I stood. You have a star, he announced, pointing at my shoulder. I do, I said, kneeling down to his level. Do you know what it means? He shook his head. It means I get to take care of a lot of people. Make sure they have what they need to do their jobs. Like a teacher? Exactly like a teacher. He seemed satisfied with this answer and ran back to Ryan. My mother hugged me so hard I heard my spine crack. General Hughes, she said, pulling back to look at my face. I like the sound of that. It's a little surreal, I admitted. You've earned every bit of it, my father said, joining us. Every single bit. Uncle Tom waited until the crowd thinned before approaching. He was older now, grayer, moving a little slower. Emma, I wanted to tell you something. What's that? I've been going to the Veterans Center with Ryan. Just helping out where I can, organizing donations, that sort of thing. Last week, a young woman came in. Army veteran, served in Afghanistan. She was having trouble with her benefits claim, feeling like nobody understood what she'd been through. He paused. I told her about you. About what you did, about your service. I showed her the news coverage from your Silver Star ceremony. She cried and said she didn't know there were officers like you, people who actually cared about the troops beyond the mission. Uncle Tom, let me finish. She filed her claim. She's getting help now. And she said knowing about you made her feel less alone. He put his hand on my shoulder, careful not to disturb the new star. You're changing lives, Emma. Not just through your work, but by being who you are. I'm sorry it took me so long to see it, but I see it now. I hugged him, this man who'd once dismissed my service as drama. People could change. That's what the last decade had taught me. Not everyone did, but the ones who chose to do the work could transform completely. The reception was held in a hangar at Balling. White tablecloths, Air Force blue decorations, a cake shaped like AC-130. Ryan found me during the cocktail hour. Can I steal you for a minute? Sure. We walked outside, away from the noise. The Potomac River stretched out before us, Arlington National Cemetery visible in the distance. I've been thinking about that barbecue, Ryan said. The one where I said that thing about you milking PTSD. Ryan, we've moved past, I know we have. But I need to say this. He turned to face me. That was the worst thing I've ever done. Not the worst thing I've said, the worst thing I've done. Because I took something real and painful and sacred, and I mocked it for a laugh. I weaponized your trauma to make myself feel bigger. His voice cracked. I've apologized before, but I don't think I've ever really articulated how ashamed I am of that moment. How much I wish I could take it back. You can't take it back, I said gently. But you've spent years making amends. That counts for something. Does it count enough? I thought about that question. About the years of therapy, the nightmares, the slow work of rebuilding my relationship with my family. About Ryan showing up, week after week, to the Veterans Center. About him bringing his son to my promotion ceremony and teaching him to respect service. Yeah, I said finally. It does. He nodded, wiping his eyes. Thank you. We stood there for a moment, two cousins who'd grown up close, grown apart, and found their way back to each other through pain and grace. You know what the crazy thing is? Ryan said. What? You were always going to end up here. General Hughes. Even when we were kids, there was something about you, this quiet certainty that you were going somewhere important. I didn't feel certain. But you were. You always knew who you were, even when the rest of us were still figuring it out. He smiled. I'm glad I get to see it. Glad Marcus gets to know you. Glad I didn't fuck it up so badly that we couldn't come back from it. Me too, I said. We walked back inside together. The party continued late into the evening. I danced with my father, who whispered, "Your mother and I are so proud of you," as we swayed to big band music. I talked with old colleagues, swapped stories with fellow general officers, accepted congratulations from people I'd served with over 2 decades. At 2200 hours, I found a quiet corner with a glass of champagne and watched my family. My parents, talking with Ryan and Sarah. Marcus, asleep in his father's arms. Uncle Tom, laughing at something my aunt said. They were imperfect people who'd made mistakes, just like me. But they'd shown up tonight. They'd done the work. That had to be enough. Lieutenant Colonel Harris found me in my corner. He was a full colonel now, serving at the Air Staff. Congratulations, General. Thank you, sir. I mean, Mike. It felt strange calling him by his first name after years of military formality. You're going to do great things at this level, he said. You already have. I'm just trying to take care of people. That's exactly why you'll succeed. He raised his glass. To General Hughes. May she never forget what it's like to be a second lieutenant moving cargo in Qatar. I laughed and clinked my glass against his. Not a chance. The party wound down around midnight. My family said their goodbyes. Ryan hugged me carefully, mindful of Marcus sleeping on his shoulder. Love you, Em. Love you too. As they walked away, Marcus stirred and looked back at me. Bye, General and Emma, he said sleepily. I waved. They disappeared into the parking lot, and I stood in the empty hangar, surrounded by decorations and half-empty champagne glasses, feeling more at peace than I had in years. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to the photo I kept there, the only one I had from that day in Syria. Someone had taken it in the aftermath, before the official photographers arrived. I was sitting on the ground, covered in soot and blood, Sandra's dog tags in my hand. Behind me, 40 soldiers were being loaded into ambulances, alive because of what we'd done. I looked at that photo every few months. Not to remember the trauma, but to remember why it mattered. Why the quiet, unglamorous work of logistics and coordination and showing up every day meant something. Why service, real service, was never about the glory. I put the phone away. Tomorrow, I'd start my new role. I'd coordinate operations, make decisions that affected thousands of people, carry the weight of responsibility that came with a general's star. But tonight, I was just Emma. The girl from Colorado who'd joined the Air Force because she wanted to serve something bigger than herself. The woman who'd survived trauma and learned to carry it with grace. The general who'd never forgotten what it felt like to be a second lieutenant, uncertain but determined. I turned off the lights in the hangar and walked to my car. The drive back to my apartment took 20 minutes. I spent it in silence, just breathing, just being. At home, I changed out of my dress blues, carefully hanging the uniform with its new star. I made tea. I sat on my couch and opened my laptop, checking emails from work even though I'd officially started tomorrow. There were already 100 messages. Requests for meetings, briefings to review, decisions that needed my input. I closed the laptop. Tomorrow was soon enough. I thought about texting Ryan, telling him thank you for bringing Marcus, for being there, for choosing to change. But we were past needing constant affirmation. The work spoke for itself. Instead, I texted my mother, thank you for tonight. Love you. She responded immediately, so proud of you, sweetheart. Sleep well. I finished my tea, brushed my teeth, and got into bed. The nightmares still came sometimes, but not tonight. Tonight, I slept the sleep of someone who'd made peace with her past and was ready for whatever came next. Because that's what service taught you. You couldn't control what happened. You could only control how you showed up. And I'd learned to show up with honor, with grace, with the quiet certainty that doing the right thing, even when no one was watching, even when no one understood, was its own reward. The medals were nice. The recognition mattered. But the real victory was this: I knew who I was. And that was something nobody could ever take away. 5 years later, I stood in the same spot at the Air Force Memorial where I'd received the Silver Star. This time, I was here for someone else's ceremony. Staff Sergeant Jennifer Martinez was receiving the Airman's Medal for Heroism. She'd saved 3 people from a burning building on base, going back inside twice when everyone told her not to. I'd read her citation. I'd approved her award. Now I got to watch her receive it. She was 26, the same age I'd been when everything changed. She stood at attention, eyes forward, while a colonel read her accomplishments. Her family sat in the front row, crying, proud. When the medal was pinned to her chest, she didn't smile. She just saluted and stepped back. I understood that response. At the reception afterward, I found her standing alone, looking uncomfortable in a room full of senior officers. Staff Sergeant Martinez. She turned and snapped to attention when she saw my star. Ma'am. At ease. How are you holding up? Honestly, ma'am? I just want to go back to work. I smiled. I felt the same way at my ceremony. You did. I did. It's hard to accept recognition for doing what you felt was right in the moment. She relaxed slightly. Everyone keeps calling me a hero. But I just did what needed to be done. That's what heroes do, I said. They show up and do what needs to be done, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. She nodded, still processing. Permission to speak freely, ma'am? Always. I saw your Silver Star ceremony on YouTube. The footage from your crash. That's what made me want to stay in the Air Force when I was thinking about getting out. I felt something catch in my throat. I'm glad you stayed. Me too. She smiled for the first time. I hope I can have a career like yours, ma'am. You will. Just keep showing up. Keep doing the work. The rest takes care of itself. We talked for a few more minutes, then I let her get back to her family. As I walked away, I thought about the chain of service that connected us all. Sandra Voss, who'd taught me what leadership looked like in the worst moments. Me, who'd somehow taught this young staff sergeant that staying mattered. And all the people they would teach in turn. That evening, I had dinner with Ryan and his family. They had 2 kids now. Marcus was 8, and his sister Julia was 5. We met at a restaurant near their house in Virginia. Marcus ran to me when I arrived, hugging my waist. Aunt Emma, Dad said you gave someone a medal today. I did. A very brave airman. Did she fly planes? No, she saves lives in other ways. Just like your dad does at the Veterans Center. Marcus seemed to think about this. There are lots of ways to be brave, huh? Lots of ways, I agreed. Over dinner, Ryan told me about his work. He'd been promoted to director of the Veterans Center, overseeing programs across 3 locations. We're expanding our mental health services, he said. Hired 2 new counselors, started a peer support group specifically for women veterans. That's incredible, I said. It's needed. We had a vet come in last week, Marine Corps, served in Iraq. She's been out for 5 years and only now starting to deal with her PTSD. Said she didn't think she deserved help because she wasn't combat arms. He shook his head. Sound familiar? I smiled sadly. Very familiar. I told her about you. Hope that's okay. It's fine. She cried. Said she'd been carrying this shame about her service not being real enough, and hearing about an Air Force logistics officer who received the Silver Star, it meant something to her. Sarah reached over and squeezed my hand. You're helping people you'll never meet, Emma. Just by being who you are. After dinner, the kids wanted to play at the park across the street. We walked over together, the adults sitting on benches while Marcus and Julia climbed on the equipment. Can I ask you something? Ryan said. Sure. Do you ever regret it? The service, I mean. All the years, all the sacrifice. I watched Marcus helping Julia reach the monkey bars, patient and protective. No, never. Even the hard parts, especially the hard parts, made me who I am. I think about that barbecue sometimes, he said. I know we've moved past it, but I still think about it. About how close I came to losing you because I was too stubborn and stupid to see what was right in front of me. But you didn't lose me, I said. That's what matters. How did you forgive me? Really forgive me, not just say it. I thought about that question. About all the therapy sessions, the conversations, the slow rebuilding of trust. I realized you were trapped in your own story about who you were supposed to be, what your life was supposed to look like. And when you were ready to write a new story, you did the work. You didn't just apologize, you changed. I'm still changing, he said. Good. We all should be. Julia ran over, breathless. Aunt Emma, Marcus says you're a general. Is that like a princess? I laughed. Sort of. But with more responsibility and less sparkles. Can girls be generals? Girls can be anything they want, I said. Including generals. She seemed satisfied with this answer and ran back to the playground. Sarah called the kids in at 7:30. We walked back to their house, Marcus holding my hand, telling me about his school and his friends and his favorite video game. At their door, I hugged everyone goodbye. Ryan held on an extra moment. Thank you, he whispered. For what? For showing up. For staying. For teaching my kids that integrity matters more than ego. I squeezed him tighter. Thank you for doing the work to become someone worth staying for. I drove home as the sun set, painting the sky in shades of orange and gold. My phone buzzed, a message from Captain Reyes, now a lieutenant colonel. Heard you spoke to Martinez today. She texted me. You made her year. I smiled and texted back, just paying forward what you did for me. At home, I poured a glass of wine and sat on my balcony, looking out at the city. Somewhere out there, Staff Sergeant Martinez was probably still processing her ceremony, trying to understand what it meant. Somewhere, Ryan was putting his kids to bed, maybe telling them stories about service and sacrifice. Somewhere, young men and women were joining the military, starting their own journeys, carrying their own dreams and fears. And somewhere, I knew, there were people having barbecues where someone was being mocked for their service, dismissed for their trauma, made to feel small by people who didn't understand. I couldn't fix all of it, but I could keep showing up, keep doing the work, keep being proof that service mattered, that quiet strength was real strength, that you didn't need everyone to understand, you just needed to know your own truth. My phone buzzed again. This time it was my mother. Saw your speech at the ceremony on the news. Your father and I are so proud. Love you. I texted back a heart emoji. Then I opened my laptop and reviewed briefs for tomorrow's meetings. A supply chain issue in Japan. Personnel shortages in Europe. Budget allocation decisions that would affect thousands of airmen. It was unglamorous work. The kind that never made headlines. The kind that saved lives anyway. I worked until 2200 hours, then closed my laptop and got ready for bed. Before turning off the lights, I looked at the photo of Sandra Voss on my nightstand. Still here, boss, I said quietly. Still doing the work. In the dark, I could almost hear her laugh, that big, room-filling sound that I'd loved. She'd be proud of the person I'd become. Hell, I was proud of the person I'd become. The nightmares came less frequently now. Maybe once a month, if that. When they did, I knew how to breathe through them, how to ground myself in the present. Dr. Price had taught me that. Reyes had reinforced it. Time had made it easier. I wasn't the same person who'd pulled Sandra from that cockpit. That woman had been younger, less certain, still trying to prove herself to people whose opinions didn't matter. Now, at 51 years old, with 30 years of service behind me and a general star on my shoulder, I knew exactly who I was. I was the girl from Colorado who'd wanted to serve something bigger than herself. I was the officer who'd learned that leadership meant showing up, especially when it was hard. I was the survivor who'd turned trauma into purpose, pain into growth. I was the cousin who'd forgiven because healing mattered more than holding grudges. I was all of it. The messy, complicated, imperfect truth of a life spent in service. And I was at peace with that. Tomorrow, I'd wake up at 0500 hours. I'd run 5 miles. I'd shower, put on my uniform, and go to work coordinating operations that most people would never hear about. I'd make decisions that affected lives. I'd mentor junior officers. I'd push back against bad ideas and champion good ones. I'd do my job with the same quiet determination I'd brought to every day of my career. Because that's what service was. Not the ceremonies or the medals or the recognition. It was showing up, day after day, and doing the work that needed to be done. It was being the person others could count on when everything fell apart. It was holding the line, keeping the faith, staying true to your values even when, especially when no one was watching. And if, someday, my story helped one person feel less alone, one veteran seek the help they needed, one young officer believe that their service mattered regardless of their job title, then every hard moment, every sacrifice, every barbecue where I'd been made to feel small would have been worth it. Because justice didn't roar. It didn't demand attention or validation. It arrived quietly in the accumulation of small choices made with integrity. In the lives touched, the standards upheld, the truth that emerged when everything else fell away. I'd learned that lesson the hard way. But I'd learned it. And I'd spend the rest of my life teaching it to anyone who'd listen. I closed my eyes and fell asleep, secure in the knowledge that tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities to serve, new chances to prove that quiet strength was the truest strength of all. The barbecue was years behind me. The crash was years behind me. The hurt and the healing, the betrayal and the forgiveness, all of it was woven into who I'd become. And I wouldn't change a single moment. Because every moment had led me here. To peace. To purpose. To a life well lived in service of something greater than myself. That was enough. That was everything. Thanks for listening. I'm Emma Hughes, and that's how a joke at a barbecue turned into a hard boundary. Have you ever had your pain dismissed, then proven right? What finally made you draw the line? If you've dealt with PTSD or an invisible injury, What helped you get support? How did your family react once the truth was public? Drop your story in the comments, share this with someone who needs backup today, and hit like/subscribe for more grounded boundary setting stories.